Welcome back, Trinidad and Tobago. Well, Maya Kozia, she's an award-winning filmmaker who won an open scholarship from the government of Trinidad and Tobago and chose to study film at the School of Visual Arts in New York. Since then, she has gone on to showcase her film Short Drop in 20 film festivals around the world. She was even listed by Caribbean Beat magazine as one of 25 people under 25 making waves in the Caribbean. She also just competed in the Miss World Trinidad and Tobago pageant, where she placed in the top 6. And Maya Kozia is currently raising funds to complete the production of her next film called Shea Paradise. And guess what? She is here with us in studio to tell us all about it. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning. Thanks
Congratulations to you on all your various endeavors.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure having you this morning. How long have you been in the film business?
I've been doing this for about 5 years, 2 years out of school. I studied at SVA in New York, and that was my first introduction to film. My background is in fine arts and dance. So my interests in art have evolved over the years, and since I returned home, I've been making short documentaries, music videos. I've been collaborating with a lot of filmmakers locally, and we recently wrapped a short film in June, which I'm currently editing. So it's been a very fun and interesting experience. Yeah.
What led to your interest in film?
So growing up, I danced a lot. I then started doing art in Form 6, Lower 6, and Upper 6. And I actually got into film by accident. I wanted to go to school for art. I applied to Parsons in New York. I got through. I actually got a scholarship to go to Parsons. And I had this very strong interest in moving images. And I wanted to know how I could incorporate that into my work. So I just enrolled in the film program without really knowing much about it, which is also, sort of ties back into like high schools here. We have art programs,
yes,
but we don't usually introduce film at the high school level. So I looked at a lot of films, and I really had that interest, but I didn't get into it until I enrolled at art school in New York.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about that experience at the School of Visual Arts in New York. How is it for you? How has it impacted you?
Yeah, I mean, there were students from all over the world in that program, and just being able to hear about where they're from and their film cultures, and also broaden my worldview, was a very amazing experience. I also learned a lot from my colleagues. Yes, we have professors, but I learned a lot from my colleagues and the people that I were in class with. Also, film is a very collaborative art form. So being on set and working with your peers is really when the learning happened.
Now, we mentioned earlier Short Drop. That was a big hit for you.
Yeah.
What was the experience like putting that together?
Yeah, so Short Drop was my thesis film. So before you graduate, you have to make a short film. And I was really determined to make a film set in Trinidad and Tobago. I started developing the script about a retiree whose car gets mistaken for a taxi during rush hour in downtown Port of Spain. So 1, I wanted to fly home to shoot, and 2, I also wanted to shoot a film in a moving car. I remember my thesis advisor said, okay, these are 2 very huge challenges, but I was really determined to do it. I got some friends who were all willing to fly home with me to shoot this film, and we did a couple tests in New York to rig the camera to the car, which is very challenging because you kind of have to have the camera attached to the window of a car while you're trying to tell a story or film a narrative. And we also wanted to shoot it in downtown Port of Spain on Charlotte Street. So you could imagine there are people, crossing, and fruit vendors, and a lot going on. Anybody could just walk past and hit that camera down. So the risk factor was high. We insured the equipment. We put everything in place, but the risk factor was really high. It was very challenging, and we got it done.
And what was the story about?
it was about a retiree whose car gets mistaken for a taxi during rush hour. A girl jumps into the car. At first, he's hesitant, and then he decides to go along with it and drop her where she's going. And because she's, you know, this very vivacious, energetic woman, he ends up getting enrolled with all her misadventures, and then different characters jump into the car. So it's really like a character-driven story, but it's mostly a story about how, you know, people from different walks of life will interact once they're put into a very intimate setting.
So that was so that was the purpose behind it. It was showcasing that the different. Okay, that sounds wonderful. Now, how would you describe this new film, She Paradise, and when you compare it to Short Drop, how different or similar are they both?
Yeah. So when I graduated from film school, I flew to Miami because my film Short Drop was showing at a festival there. It was a Caribbean festival, so they showed a lot of films from the Caribbean diaspora and the African diaspora. And I remember sitting there looking at all the films, and there were a lot of seascapes and a lot of nature, and I thought to myself that is very reflective of the Caribbean. But at that moment, I felt like there was something missing. And what drives me as a filmmaker is expanding the narratives around filmmaking and adding to those narratives. So it's not really about eliminating what we're doing, but it's about expanding on that and adding. And I noticed I hadn't seen a film that explored an urban space within the Caribbean, and I hadn't seen a film that had a strong female lead and that told a story about a teenage girl. So I became very determined at that point to make my next film about a teenage girl. And She Paradise is basically a coming-of-age story about a girl trying to fit in, which is something that we can all relate to. She meets a group of soca backup dancers in the heart of downtown Port of Spain, and she sees an opportunity for friendship and sisterhood with these girls. She experiences resistance at first, and the film ends on a note of her possibly having a future with these girls. So that's the short. The feature, we're still writing and developing it, but our plan is to take this short film and eventually turn it into a feature film.
How would you describe your style as a filmmaker? And when we look at your work, how do we know that it is yours? What about it stands out or is different or unique?
I love independent cinema. I love cinema that explores personal stories. I love character-driven stories. My films tend to be very character-driven. So Short Drop, you know, explored the internal world of, you know, this retiree who has this moment with these people. So the style is very, I suppose, dialogue. Dialogue is something that a lot of people tend to love about my work, and the simplicity and the ability to tell a story that feels like a slice of life.
And how do you plan to raise funds for this venture to complete She Paradise?
So we shot She Paradise in June, and we were able to subsidize our production costs thanks to the help of sponsors. So MAC Cosmetics really loved the idea. They gave us boxes of makeup, which helped. We had, you know, Vamco gave us Crafty, Vambev. A lot of sponsors helped subsidize our costs. And then I had a lot of friends in the film industry who all came together to work on this film set. We wrapped a 4-day shoot in June, and now we're going into the post-production phase, which involves editing, color correction, sound design. So we launched an Indiegogo campaign. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Indiegogo, this is basically an online fundraising platform, and you can tap into various creative communities in order to get an idea funded. So a lot of filmmakers have used it in the past. Famous filmmakers such as Spike Lee, they've resorted to online funding, and it's great because when you get lots of people just pitching in small amounts, you can actually get the funds you needed to finish a project. So we're 46% there. We've raised 46% of our goal. So now we have, you know, the other half to do. We managed to do that in just a week, and we have 18 more days left. If you contribute to this Indiegogo campaign, you can get a perk. So a perk is basically something you get in return for funding a local film. Some of the perks involve a link to my last film, Short Drop, which won at the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival and also won Best Caribbean Film at Curacao Film Festival. You can get signed limited edition prints, signed posters. So there are a lot of really interesting perks that you can get for contributing online to this local film. And we also give you shout outs online and keep you up to date with our production process. So if you're interested in backing this project, you can find us by just Googling She Paradise Indiegogo.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Any closing comments?
Thank you for having me. Just that we need to see more films coming out of Trinidad and Tobago. We've had a wave of films in the last 3 years with Play the Devil and The Cutlass, and I would really like to see that grow. So yes, the support has been overwhelming, and thank you for having me on set.
Great chatting with you. Great meeting you, Maya. It's been a pleasure having you this morning. We've been chatting with Maya Kozia, filmmaker, an award-winning filmmaker, rather, who won an open scholarship from the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and she chose to study film at the School of Visual Arts in New York. We take a short break. Much more when we return.